Hello and welcome to episode. I'm your host Michael Block, and with me today is the man who knows everything, Mr. Simon Canton. Simon, how are you feeling this week? How are you doing?
I'm okay. I've got the flu at the moment, so I'm a bit kind of dizzy and feverish, but otherwise I'm pretty good.
Yeah, I
You?
mean, I have to admit as well something else. Where this is, it's been at least 2 weeks since the first podcast. It's completely my fault that we had no podcast last week because I was dying of the flu last week. I literally um, could not, bring up the will to even speak on the interwebs. Not at all. I was that bad, which is frankly amazing. I have given up smoking at least 2.5 years ago, and never before while smoking did I ever have still suffering. But I'm soldiering on. I'm blaming everybody else. Today we've got a number of topics to talk about. The first one I'd like to talk about is this issue, really an American issue, which is that of net neutrality. There's a lot of articles on the web today about that after the FCC's announcement today. But the one I'd like to talk to you about, I'm just picking one at random, is a BBC article written by Jane Wakefield entitled "Net Neutrality Rules Passed by U.S. Regulator." And it seems that, just quoting from this article, that the U.S. Telecommunications Industry Association said that broadband providers would take immediate legal action over the rule changes, and the main changes for providers are that broadband access is being reclassified as telecommunication service, meaning it would be
Yeah.
subject to much heavier regulation. In
Well, they're going to be
summary,
classified as a common carrier then. So I didn't see this particular article, but I've been following it. I mean, it's pretty important.
mm,
So in the US, there's a thing called common carriers, and common carriers it came about for the telephone industry when there was landlines, because one company did all of the landlines and then had complete monopoly over everyone's phones. So you had to buy a phone from them, and you couldn't use another person's phone and all this kind of stuff. Same as Aircom used to be in Ireland.
absolutely.
So the US then, I think in the 80s, or it may have been earlier, then said, no, this is a common carrier service where you can't restrict it. It's something that's so vital that you can't stop someone from having it because they can't pay for your particular brand of service. And the internet is the same deal. I mean, the internet is used for everything. You can't restrict someone's access to the internet these days because you don't agree with them politically or whatever.
And I think, and I mean, you'll be able to speak to this. I think one of the big concerns was what were growing plans between some of the big providers in America, Comcast and AT&T, a number of companies that we would know here. It was certainly Ireland, companies, they don't sell products here, and probably the same in Norway. But is that you'd know these names by brand, but they seem to be formulating ideas that they would sell faster and slower broadband depending on various people. So I think the position was that if you're using a shit ton of data, we're going to be starting, if in order for you to continue to be flowing at the same speed as everyone else, we're going to start charging you a little bit more. So the people who are getting huge benefits out of it, I mean, people can joke and laugh about individuals downloading stuff off the internet, but the real issue here is the people who are the servers, which is people like Netflix, iTunes, massive companies like that would be leveraged different monies so that they could continue to provide the service that they've already been provided at the moment. I mean, wasn't that one of the big issues?
No, the biggest issue is, so say you've got YouTube today, and say there's a new video web service that's better than YouTube. If Comcast and AT&T required that the YouTube-esque services pay them money in order that the videos not be stopping every 5 seconds, then the small service that's just starting up that's better than YouTube can't pay that.
Can't compete.
They're screwed. They're done. Yeah. YouTube, Google have so much money they could pay anything. So it's not a problem for them, but Google are against this anyway because in terms of the free internet in general, it's the same. It's the companies in America trying to do the same as they've done for TV. So TV news in America is completely controlled by the corporations. So there's nothing ever that's against a corporation on the TV station because they're an advertiser and you can't say anything against them.
Well, that's true because they have a very strange thing which we hear about it in American movies or TV shows about their sort of public service network, and sometimes it's talked about, and frankly, it doesn't seem to be in any way similar to what we would have in Europe, where we would have a home provider such as RTE here in Ireland, or in the UK BBC television, which is a inverted commas free service subject to a TV license. It seems to me they have an entirely different thing. But just going back to that, isn't it important even that big companies wouldn't leverage either? I mean, because ultimately that money is just going to be passed on to the consumer. So I mean, it may well be that iTunes and Netflix may well be able to afford, being penalized for being a bigger user, but it would ultimately just be passed on to the consumer, which means Netflix would get more expensive, Spotify would get more expensive, and so on and so forth. iTunes, and because ultimately this money, any charges that are passed on to them would ultimately be passed on to us, which is obviously not what we want.
Well, there's been government money. I forget what the article was, but I read about this. There's government money in the U.S. was given to internet providers, and in order that they could upgrade some of their lines, so that they could have proper broadband.
Which hasn't really happened.
No, they just
have
took the
very
money
good.
and ran away with it.
Yeah.
Because no one's going to make them, so why would they bother? Just take the money. But I mean, America's messed up in that way.
And effectively the position here is that they've been maintaining they want to maintain net neutrality, that no particular person will be restricted more so than ever. Obviously, this does have free speech implications as well, which obviously, very.
Well, it's a big surprise, to be honest.
Yes.
Because the guy who's in charge of the FCC is a former telecoms.
That's correct. Yeah, he's a lobbyist. He used to be a lobbyist for the
lobbyist for the telecoms industry.
Yeah.
So when Obama appointed him, everyone said, "Okay, that's done. Obama doesn't care about net neutrality. He's selling it to the corporations." Because Obama, in some ways, is great, and in some ways, is terrible. Like, he is very much a corporatist in a lot of ways. So everyone said, "Okay, net neutrality is done," and then they've gone in this direction, which is very surprising, but positive. I mean, they can't if they restrict themselves and other countries don't. I mean, they're at a technical disadvantage.
Yeah, just reading on the specifics, just for everybody. I mean, I think just the last paragraph of this thing, it's about the fast lanes, this concept of fast lanes, and it's quite weird because, see, I think from our point of view, we know fast lanes as to, well, my provider is giving me this speed, or that provider is giving me that speed, but that's more a case of nobody's trying to buffer anyone. That's just what you pay for. That's their infrastructure is that good or that bad or whatever. But I think fast lanes the idea of fast lanes were going to be artificially introduced, i.e. we can go faster, but we're going to make you go slower, or we're going to make you go faster if you pay us a little bit more. Anyway, I'm just quoting here that the last bit, the need for these new rules was a result of legal action taken in January in 2014 by Verizon, which is obviously a big provider like AT&T in America. Which challenged existing NEBIN guidelines, I think, in place. And it was a court case which found that the FCC had improperly regulated the internet providers. And they were a similar public utility, and again, that speaks to what you've been saying, originally classified as information services. And it spurred on calls to reclassify broadband as a utility.
That's the thing. They did change it over to make it just a regular thing, instead of, like, if you've got a water provider or something like that, you can't screw around with that, and they made it just a regular company, like the internet wasn't important. And these days, the internet is vital.
Which actually interests me now that you've just moved on to that, just a segue out of that thing. This concept, though, of a utility service, whether it be water or electricity being so fundamental, seems to be a cornerstone of the argument for the pro net neutrality lobby. but I mean, that's an interesting argument in itself, or even discussion, in the sense that that is even a very changeable, movable feast depending on what country you're in. So, for instance, I don't know if you're aware or you're keeping in touch, but for instance, obviously, we have an Irish water regulator being set up, and well, has been set up, is in place. Huge money's been funneled into this white elephant, some might call it, which are now going to do the job. What would have been of the county councils, what would have been your income tax paying for water, and now they're trying to get individuals to effectively pay a water charge on a usage basis, or a flat rate base for the beginning, and then maybe moving towards a usage model. Um, you
Which is,
obviously, you hear it's a new thing, but what's your experience in Norway? Is there anything like that equivalent?
so we pay our council tax, obviously, which
Yeah.
is water and garbage collection and stuff like that.
We pay a property tax, which is a new tax that was introduced a couple of years ago. All these taxes are only required when a recession has happened, obviously. I think we did
Well,
away
it's,
with the council tax back in the 80s, isn't that right? Here in Ireland, we kind of did away with that, other than corporation tax, which is obviously for companies, but we don't really have a council tax. The property tax is meant to come in and sort that out, but now they have a separate charge. So you have a tax on top of income tax for living, effectively, for your house, and that's a council tax, and that includes water. Is that right?
that includes water, and I forget,
Is,
it's about 300, maybe 400.
and is that a flat rate charge?
No, it depends on the size of your house.
But
Um,
it's not on usage of garbage or usage on water.
well, if we needed another bin, that would cost us more.
Okay.
Yeah, and if we got a composter, there's a little course you can do, and then they give you a composter, and if you do that course and take the composter, then they charge you less on your council tax.
That's quite a novel thing. I assume everyone does the course, right?
No one does the course.
I see. Okay.
Everyone's too lazy. They just pay the.
And what's the tax rate in Norway at the moment? The general tax rate, the sort of average, whatever. I'm sure you have a number. I mean,
It's
is it equivalent? I mean, to sort of
it's
in
equivalent.
Ireland, 42%,
Um,
but in effect, it's now like 50% when you take, all the other charges involved.
well, that's the thing. All these charges are so you can so you can tax the poor and not the rich.
Yeah.
Because the rich just pay if they're council taxes, the rich are paying the same council tax as a poor person is paying.
Yeah.
But you
Yeah.
reduce the overall tax level for rich people, so they win. I mean, that's what the right wing.
No, but I mean that's maths. I mean, it makes sense. As much as nobody wants to pay these taxes, it affects people who have less money because it's in no way means tested or a percentile of what you've earned. If you're earning 100 grand and you have to pay 1,000 quid tax, you don't like to, but for a council charge or a property tax or water charge, you don't like to do it. But it's 1,000 euros out of your 100 grand earnings. If you're only earning 10 grand and you have to pay 1,000 quid, fees for something similar to that, that's a massive amount out of your earnings.
Well, they said in one state in Norway, or not in Norway, in America now,
That you,
that it's the state tax. So they have state tax and they have federal tax, and the state tax is 5% for rich people and 10% for poor people.
yeah, well, okay,
How is that
exactly.
fair?
Yeah, well, exactly. Well, I don't know how I'm kind of going to squeeze myself out, but from fairness to unfairness, there's a games company called Telltale who seem to always get glowing reviews for its games. But is it fair that no one seems to really hold them to task in the same way as other games publishers are held to task for buggy games? There's an article, and indeed, I mean, anyone who's listening to podcasts or shows on the internet in the game sphere will often hear people make comments about Telltale's games, their games engine being a little bit buggy, but albeit being impressed by their narrative story-driven games. But it does seem to be that, if you're a Microsoft or even a Sony and there's something a little wrong with your game, or like Drive Club or Halo Master Chief Collection, you're going to get absolutely pilloried. But yet, Telltale games seem to be getting away with that. There's as I said, I think you showed me an article on Kotaku, it's by Kirk Hamilton. It's entitled A Chronicle of Buggy Games. Again, this I don't not going to read um, through his article in total. He starts off with somewhat of a quote. It's a truth universally acknowledged. You'll be able to tell me where that comes from. Isn't that some sort of a Jane Austen starter of a book?
Yeah,
Isn't that correct?
I think
Which
it's
one
Pride
is
and
it?
Prejudice.
Yes,
Pride and Prejudice. It's a truth
it could
universally
it
acknowledged.
could well be Pride and Prejudice. On with the games media, is it the pride they have in Telltale Games, or are they prejudiced? Is it just why are they getting a free pass? Just speak to me about that, Simon. First of all, what Telltale games have you played? I mean, they're everywhere. You can play The Walking Dead on iOS. It looks the exact same. It may not run as well.
Well, they're scaled down their games
Yeah,
in a way. Like they're not like the newest Call of Duty or something
yeah,
has amazing graphics.
yeah.
Telltale is not going to strain anyone's graphics.
No, it's a choose-your-own-adventure game with its own little style, and in many respects, there's no reason for it to be as buggy as it is, because frankly, even on high-end PCs, it's still some of these games still run according to the internet. I mean, I've only played them on Xbox 360, Xbox One, but sometimes these games play a little bit not so great. I mean, they're fine, they're workable, they're not in any way game destroying, but just a little janky for a company that, frankly, is dealing with a huge amount of franchise. In your experience with Telltale,
You keep silencing out, just so you know. You
sorry,
keep disappearing.
sorry. What's your experience of Telltale games? You know, which ones have you played?
So I played the Sam and Max games when they redid them. So this is why I think Telltale gets a pass, because they came along as this tiny little studio that had gotten the rights to make the Sam and Max games again,
Mm-hmm.
and they did a good job of them. Like, they were very enjoyable games. I played through the 2 seasons they made. I think they haven't made any more. And then they came out with Tales of Monkey Island, which was pretty good too. So I played those, and then so they're kind of, in a way, they were kind of like PopCap at the time. PopCap were making Peggle and
Yeah,
Plants vs Zombies and things like that. So they were a small studio making games that caught on
yeah.
and
The
became very
underdog, well liked kind of thing.
exactly.
Yeah.
And the underdog thing is probably still working for them, because people still associate their brand with being a tiny little company and being the underdog and stuff like that. So I think that's why they don't get as much criticism as an EA or a Microsoft would, because EA and Microsoft are massive corporations. So I would think that's probably why. Like, people are more inclined to forgive someone who's the underdog a little bit.
There's no doubt. I mean, I think you're absolutely correct about that. And in many respects, they're doing this fantastic Kevin Spacey-esque Kaiser Soze number on everybody, because from the Sam and Max games, which I never had the pleasure of playing and I've only heard of, and I think they did a Back to the Future game as well, which maybe, and even a Jurassic Park, which is maybe a bit janky as well. I certainly have seen and played a demo of the updates that we played way back on the Amiga, way back when, and you know, that was a time when they were small and up and coming. Then they obviously had this massive breakout success with season 1 of The Walking Dead, which I don't know if you've played. Have you? Have you got?
Yeah,
to
I
play?
played. I got to episode 5, I think, or the second last episode, whatever one that was,
Of the first season, yeah.
of the first season, and then I just kept up.
And what did you think? What did
So I
you think of
enjoyed it.
that?
Like, I enjoyed it. I got the.
I mean, as a
It was almost like a kind of. They
writer, I
had
mean,
to limit the
the game
choices.
itself is.
Sorry.
Yes, I mean, no, sorry. Go on, Simon. I interrupted you.
I could understand why they could only give you so many choices. So there was like 3 choices per episode, and each episode took, I don't know, an hour or 2 to play,
Yeah.
because those choices carried forward. So someone's dead, you can't have them pop up in the next episode. So most of it was like watching a animated Walking Dead episode, because they couldn't have you make decisions, because then you'd screw up the fact that they'd have to account for that later. So I understood that. And I did like the thing where it said you made the same decision as so many people, because quite often I made the same decision as nearly no one.
Yeah.
Like I go, screw that friendly guy, let's go with the nasty woman or whatever. So that was quite fun, but in the end I just got bored.
Yeah, I mean, I think I think the thing is, it's never going to be, as you say, some sort of a Twitch shooter sort of thing. You have to accept what it is. It's a sort of an interactive story. You know, people in this age like audiobooks. People like TV shows. You know, like The Walking Dead. Um, it's a combination of that. You might say it's almost like an interactive audiobook. You know, it's a short story. Um, and in order for it to work, it has to have charm. I mean, people would say it's well written. I mean, look, the writing isn't going to win any sort of classical awards, but it's certainly impactful. I mean, I certainly think that season one of The Walking Dead, you know, you know, not for everybody, but I think most people would have said, oh, you know, fallen in love with Clementine or Lee or whatever it was, and they definitely hit a chord on before, and you know, say la vie. And their engine is a bit janky, but I mean, by and large, it didn't need to be fantastic. I think what people might be disappointed engine-wise now is, look, you never were doing anything super fantastic. You've sold a lot of games, put some money into the engine and make it run smoothly. We're not asking for you to turn it into photorealistic graphics
Well,
because also on the story, but make it run properly, you know?
yeah, I mean, I think the engine thing is one thing. The other thing is if people are underestimating the amount of work that goes into the games, perhaps on the story side.
Yeah.
Because I mean, I wrote a choose your own adventure thing for Green Star, one of my books, and each episode is normally 10,000 words, and we wrote a choose your own adventure, and it was 25,000 words. So just and in our
And were you a
way,
co-author in that, Simon, or
yeah, with Dave Higgins. Dave Higgins is my
what's the name? What was the name of that book?
Green Star.
And where can you find that?
On Amazon, Kobo, iBooks.
Green Star is the title. Okay, well, fantastic.
Yeah. Or you can go to my website. The first 3 episodes are free as an intro.
Fantastic. No,
But anyway, my point
didn't know
wasn't
that at all. But I don't mind plugging it while we're there, you know, for sure.
But my point was that the amount of work that goes into their storytelling, I think, is huge compared to what people think it is. I don't think people realize that even putting in 3 choices is tripling the amount of work you have to do for every episode. So
No, yeah, absolutely. And just to speak to that, because I was listening to a podcast this week. It's the Game Over Greggy show, which is a YouTube and iTunes podcast with Greg Miller, Colin Miller, Tim Geddes, and Nick Scarpino. They had Gary Whitta on. Now, Gary Whitta is just finished writing a treatment. Bless you, just finished writing a treatment for the second new Star Wars movie. So that's the you know, number 4, 5, 6, 7, number 8, right? I think he's just finished a treatment for that. But he previously, Gary Whitta, obviously was a writer way back when on CU magazine, Commodore User magazine, if you remember that, way back in the day, the Amiga days. He wrote the Book of Eli, and he worked with Telltale Games at this stuff. And I mean, he discussed it's quite a humorous podcast. I definitely recommend anyone checking out the Game Over Greggy show, and you'll find it in all the usual web spaces. But I mean, Gary Whitta's interview is very interesting because he was talking about that and how they, you know, they had almost like a tree branch, you know, of logic, which is if you say X, you have to make sure this doesn't mean and whatever. So the whole thing is you have to make sure that, as you said, you know, you killed somebody off. That guy doesn't appear in the next scene, you know, and you know it all has to be internally consistent, and therefore, by that very nature, you are writing 5 books. You know what I mean? Every scene, or 5 scenes for every one scene that you're doing, as you say, a teleplay or a movie play or something like that, because you're trying to account for all of the various possibilities. You know,
like even the fact that in BioWare games and stuff like that you can play as a woman means that you have to record twice as much
Absolutely. Yeah.
dialogue, which annoyed me actually playing Dragon Age because everyone called me Sir even though I was a woman. But yeah, that's another thing.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, okay, fair enough. But tell me this. Just moving on to some of the modern games. I mean, I've played the season 1 and 2 of The Walking Dead. I've played The Wolf Among Us, which was kind of interesting to kind of come with something a little different. I wasn't familiar with the comics, the Fable comics. Well, I was familiar with it, but it's not something I've read independently. Um, and I'm playing Game of Thrones. They have a Game of Thrones. I mean, this is the real issue here now. Moving forward, just to kind of finish the thoughts on this, is that they have huge properties now. They're not this underdog, as we've spoken about before, studio. They've got the rights to Game of Thrones. They've got the rights from Microsoft to do a game, a Telltale Minecraft type of game, which is one of their new IPs. In the coming weeks, probably tomorrow, or because news often gets sent out on Friday, they are going to announce that they are working on their own IP, which is an original IP. So for the first time in a long time, they're actually going to do some sort of a Telltale game, be some sort of Charlie's Angels or some other thing. They're not getting a license to. They just this week entered into a deal with Lionhead, who own the property rights to The Hunger Games and Downton Abbey. Lionhead Studios have just not Lionhead. It is Lionhead. Is that right? I'm trying to. Lionhead is the Fable.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm trying to. It's something similar to that. Some other.
Do a little search.
Yeah, studio, and just maybe while you do that. A big movie studio have invested heavily in enriching them, and they certainly own the properties to Downton Abbey and The Hunger Games. It's Lionsgate, I think, actually, is probably what it's at, Simon. But,
Lionsgate.
Yeah, Lionsgate. So, again, they're getting interest from all of these big people. They've hugely upped their studio in terms of developers and employing people, which is a great thing for the industry. It's a great thing for their team. But yet, their games are probably getting better, but the engine is still an old engine that they're just kind of shoehorning in to their environment, and they do their narrative stuff very well. I'm not criticizing for that. No one's criticizing for that. They're doing some really interesting stuff. Tell you what is brilliant. I've never played Borderlands, right? But the Tales of the Borderlands, which is another thing they released last month, the first episode of that is very, very good because it's just very humorous. It actually reminds me very much of. I think you would love it in particular if you get a chance to play maybe the first episode of Tales from the Borderlands. I'm sure it's on Steam at this stage. They may well be even giving their first episode for free just to get people involved in it, or at least if they're not doing that now, they'll be doing it soon enough. But it's definitely worth a try. Because their humor's quite working better now that it's on, like I'm playing it on Xbox One, so it's definitely better because the machines are just a little bit better. I'd say it runs janky as hell on 360 or PS3 or something like that, But they're getting a lot of money for not really updating, their machine, their engine, don't you think?
Well, the thing I would worry about is that, so Sam & Max, the whole point was they loved the series, they loved adventure games, and they really wanted to do an updated version of Sam & Max. And then to Monkey Island, the same thing. Like, they obviously loved adventure games back when we used to play adventure games. Yeah. But then, after the licenses start coming in, that's basically just a way of printing money. If you make a Hunger Games game, it doesn't need to be amazing to make tons of money because everyone's going to play it just because it's Hunger Games.
Absolutely.
And the same with all of these kind of things. So Borderlands as well is a massive franchise. So I mean, I would be interested to see what their original IP is going to be because that, to me, sounds like, I don't know, I think maybe they've just gotten too big to be that interesting to me.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think the thing is, it is interesting. I mean, and even Minecraft is almost, it's clearly not an original IP. So that when they're talking talking about that. But in a sense, that will be an original IP in the sense that if they're doing a narrative game about that, the game itself doesn't have very much. I mean, clearly they'll use the visual look of Minecraft and they'll set it in the world. And as you said, they'll get all the benefit of Microsoft marketing money, the brand and everything like that. So as you say, it'll probably sell like hotcakes. So they're, you know, and don't get me wrong, I'm not against a business making money. Like, games companies making loads of money is good for everyone. It means they stay in business, particularly rewarding those people who are good at what they do. And I think Telltale are good at what they do. I think, you know, the Tale of the Borderlands is something where I'm aware of the franchise, but I haven't played the franchise before. And frankly, they probably could have just, you know, phoned it in. But actually, I think it's a very entertaining tale. Whether you've actually played those games before or not, I think they still are very good on the narrative experience. I also think, to be fair, I think their games run fine, particularly if you've got a bit more powerful console, but they probably don't run as well as they should do, you know, at this stage. I mean, they've been making the same game engine.
Well, they're not
Inverted commas.
complicated games. I
Yeah,
mean,
they're not complicated.
if it's an adventure game, like Walking Dead especially, you couldn't do very much. So
No, and
for that
you can
to
tell
go,
it's, yeah, and you can tell it's not complicated in the sense that The Walking Dead looks the exact same on your iPhone 5 as it does on a 360, on an Xbox One, or your highest rates PC on Steam. It may run a little less smooth on what powerful a thing you have, but it looks the same. And you could never do that on so many varied platforms if it was doing something hugely complex like, you know, a Call of Duty. You're never going to be able to play Call of Duty on a handheld phone. You know what I mean? Not to the same level, I think, anyway, so far. I know these things are...
I mean, that's a smart strategy that other companies have done as well. I mean, World of Warcraft runs on a very basic PC. Granted, it won't look as good as on a high-end PC, but the whole point of Blizzard was that they wanted to make it run on everyone's PC, so there was no excuse not for a player not to get into the game.
Yeah, and I must ask you about Hearthstone sometime, but I won't. Maybe not today. But anyway, I mean, do we agree that maybe they should probably update their engine completely at this stage? I mean, will you be playing? You're not playing. You watch Game of Thrones, this TV show, or have you? Yeah. But you're not playing this game unless they sell it for free anytime soon, right?
Well, no. I mean, after The Walking Dead, so I played Sam & Max, I played Tales of Monkey Island, I played Walking Dead. And it was the same thing every time.
Yeah.
I went, okay, I've got it. Like, I've played through however many seasons of Tales of Monkey Island, 2 seasons of Sam & Max, and most of Walking Dead. I get. Yeah. Like, adventure games used to be very different because the technology was so limited that it was pretty much the best you could do was play an adventure game in terms of that kind of narrative storytelling. But now there's a lot more you can do in terms of gaming. So,
okay, yeah. I mean, if Telltale, you obviously like adventure gaming. You come from a generation where we played a lot of those things, the Leisure Suit Larry series, this, you know, Space Quest, King's Quest. They're obviously rebooting King's Quest at the moment. I wonder about that. They rebooted Grim Fandango. Obviously, Double Fine redid that recently. I just recently completed like Another World, which is an old Amiga game, which is a kind of a walk and, you know, adventure-y kind of game, although it's not. It's more action adventure. But if Telltale is not satiating your thirst for those type of games, is there another publisher doing something that you think is the right thing at the moment that you're interested in, or is it just no, you're out at the moment on that, on what you really want to see?
Well, the thing that I really loved was Secret of Monkey Island. They did an update. I don't know if you saw that.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen the update, but I think it was just a graphical update. I mean, but I may be thinking about something else.
Graphics, music, all kinds of stuff.
Voice acting, I think, as well.
Voice acting. Yeah. It basically made it like it was a modern game. But because the writing on Secret of Monkey Island was so good, then it was a really, really good adventure game, even though I played through the whole game before when it was crappy graphics. So that just kind of highlights then when other things aren't quite at that level.
Yeah.
Granted, Secret of Monkey Island was like, you know, one of the best.
It was a great game. It's a classic. So yeah.
It's difficult to compete with that. But there's just too much else so good.
And no matter what people say about the Telltale games, I actually don't think their writing is particularly good. I mean, like on a line by line dialogue, most of the line by line stuff is stuff you choose, which is, you know, tell him no or give him a hug or whatever. I mean, there's nothing hugely great what's going on there. I think what they do is very well is like a TV show. It becomes impactful. It's emotionally connecting. You don't need great literature or written words, writing in terms of that. But the story needs to be, have a good impact and drive you along. And they certainly managed to capture that to a certain degree. Not for everybody, but that's it. But definitely, I agree with you. Some of the classic games had to rely on writing being humorous and witty far more because they had much more of a limited design. They couldn't get away with, good music coming in at the right time or, a little, some shock kind of somebody jumping out of modern games. But okay, moving from Telltale and maybe even segueing from past classics like Monkey Island, maybe we could segue into some other past classic. A classic that I never had any particular interest in is that Power Rangers trailer that was released in the last couple of days. Won't go through it. I've kind of watched it very quickly through. I know you've watched it a little bit of it quickly through. I mean, it's a very long video. It has Katie Sackhoff of Battlestar Galactica fame and the Beak, James Vanderbeek Dawson himself as being some sort of a protagonist in that mini little exactly mini show if you like, or teaser trailer, whatever you want to call it. Just to cap it off, I'm going to ask your thoughts. We're going to try and be quick on this. One thing I will say is the production values for this particular show, this thing, and I mean I've seen other works on Machinima, or I know prior to Shadow of Mordor being released, there was a kind of a video trailer which I'm sure you could find no problem at all, setting out some sort of a fictional live action sort of version of Shadow of Mordor, and it was really impressive. And I mean, you should probably check that out. I know you're playing that game at the moment. It really, really was impressive. The director who did this, I think his name is like Joseph Kane or something like that, and I think he is somewhat famous for. It's very funny actually. The YouTube video that I linked you to, which I was watching myself only an hour ago. I'm just looking at the link again, and it's already got a copyright claim over from the SG Power Rangers LLC on YouTube, so it's been pulled. And I think that's what I was going to ask you about. I mean, I've already downloaded it physically onto a hard drive somewhere anyway, so I've mirrored it, so I have copies. But great. I mean, it's a teaser trailer. It was, I think, to be honest, it's obviously it was being used to self-promote the people involved, the actors, actresses, the director himself. It clearly was being done for free. He went on Twitter yesterday after it got pulled from a couple of media outlets. And obviously it's on YouTube, therefore there's loads of accounts who have it. So even if they're pulling it from all of YouTube, it'll take a while to get all of the copies out off. There's obviously the owners of Power Rangers didn't authorize this and they're taking it down. So this whole thing about fair usage, this whole idea about, what constitutes, an original idea. I mean, the famous story, I think, is of Gone with the Wind or something like that, American case about... There was some book written afterwards which was, sort of took place after Gone with the Wind and whether or not that was acceptable or something like that, or there was some, something like that, so, and there was some other famous book that was written.
You're disappearing completely, Mike.
So, it was parody. Oh, sorry, technical issues. Hopefully we'll. But in any event, maybe I'll let you speak.
30 seconds disappeared.
Okay, well, hopefully I'll keep it short and say this. Great production values, great tease, interesting and good publicity for the people involved. Am I still here?
Yeah, you're still there.
Yeah. Okay. Um, I, I've no interest in the Power Rangers. Never had, never would. I'm interested in some of the people who are in this thing. It's good publicity for them. It's keeping them on the forefront of popularity and stuff like that. But
Well,
where do you come on this? Do you think? I mean, this is fair usage? Do you think Power Rangers are right to say, "Hey, this is our property," and screw you?
um, they certainly have the right to do that. I think they're very silly to do that
Sure.
because, I mean, Power Rangers is still going, but I think its popularity has probably waned since the 90s when it was huge. And if you want people to
Yeah.
go, hey, what's Power Rangers? Then you want as many like spoof versions. Like Star Wars is great about that. Like if you look on YouTube, there are so many Star Wars spoofs and things like that, and they're not being pulled. As far as I know, at least. Like there's all the
No,
like
exactly.
remade Star Wars, like line by line, shot for shot, they've remade Star Wars and put it up on YouTube, and there's no like copyright claim on those.
Yeah, I mean, for instance, I know they did like a Lego version of the new Star Wars trailer and a Minecraft version of the new Star Wars trailer within like it seemed like literally within less than 24 hours these things were all up. Literally parroting shot for shot that the new, episode 7 trailer, And I agree with you. There's two ways to go, which is we embrace it with our community because it's part of what's brilliant about what we do, or we just go in like Nintendo is doing with their Let's Play on YouTube and say, you can't play our games. We're striking any channels, or unless you pay us all of the money you're earning from ad revenue from this. And that's another controversy that's been sort of circling the drain pipes recently. Um, from YouTube's point of view, that's a DMC thing. They've no choice. They've signed up to that thing. They get a request from somebody, and they have to delay
Well, the way
the.
they deal with
They
it
have to,
is
yeah. Well, you
they
might know about this.
they're totally biased in favor of the corporation. So they assume that something that a copyright claim is legitimate immediately. So
Yes.
then the person whose video it is has to prove that they're not violating copyright or that it's fair use. So it's guilty until proven innocent.
Well, yeah, but that's fair enough in a civil sphere. I mean, I think the way it is the procedure whereby, see, let's put it this way. They're the ones taking all the risks. They're the publisher. If they do nothing, they won't go after Michael Block, who's got some, weird, like, entire copy of, Pretty in Pink on whatever, on his website. They don't care about me. I've no money. But if Google or YouTube don't do anything about it, they're the guys with deep pockets. So they're the ones, in fairness, who have everything to lose. I mean, obviously, if you were a major YouTube personality, you have a little bit more clout, about defending
No,
yourself.
no, they don't. If you're a major
Well,
YouTube personality, you still have to go through the whole process.
you
So,
you do, but I think you'll probably be having a better. I think the process is it's an automatic strike on, it's an automatic takedown on request. Then the onus is on you to say why it's yours. And then once you submit that document, then the onus falls back on the other side to reply within so many days. And they may reply a
30,
certain
30 days and they wait it out. Or it might even be 90. So what they do is if they
it's
strike three
tactical.
of your
Yeah.
videos, if they
Your
strike
cha-
three of your videos, your channel's banned.
yeah,
That's
no
it.
matter how many viewers you have. If you have a billion viewers, if you're Justine or whatever, and you have a million, if you're PewDiePie, yeah, you don't want those bans. There is big power there, but at the same
So,
time, you know,
so they can ransom people essentially because they say, okay, like Angry Joe got screwed by that. Like
yeah,
he
but he's
essentially said that he was out of business, then he had to go back to a regular job because he was earning his money from doing Let's Plays. And then all of these video companies said, okay, that's our intellectual property that you're playing there, so therefore your
yeah,
videos are banned.
but I think the truth is currently the only people, I mean, except for yeah, Angry Joe's obviously his channel's still going very strong, and it's a funny channel. And actually, the production value of his videos, people should check that out. I think it's not somebody sometimes I have to be in the mood to actually listen to his videos because they're long, which is a good thing. I mean, I think he's a smart guy. He's not just some like it's a whole act. Like I mean, he's a smart guy. His videos are well produced. They're funny. They're well written. They're not just like turn on the camera and go. He's a clever guy, and I actually wish him a lot of luck. I think he's got a lot of talent. But let's face it, he's still in business. He's definitely been, screwed over a bit. But the truth is, the major publisher who are doing takedowns on Let's Plays are Nintendo at the moment, unless you're signed up to their channel
Yeah.
program. I mean, Microsoft, Sony, all these guys, they really, obviously there are situations where they have to do takedowns, or they make these applications. And actually one of the problems, it seems, when you listen to somebody like Jim Sterling, his problems seem to be when he gives a bad review for some independent game, on Steam or something like that. These guys, will just cite his video, left, right, and center. And he's had a number of, high-profile on Twitter spats with, the developers. Funnily enough, one of the things they did was they copyright claimed against him. Then they took his video, uploaded to their own channel, and then they posted a commentary over his commentary, taking the piss out of him. And then they called him I'm Jim fucking Sterling's son, which he's now changed his name to on Twitter. And he loved this because he absolutely loved this because this has just fired the flame for him. And in fact, he was just thinking, your game is shit. You're never going to get over that. You should just take my criticism on the chin. By coming after me, you just make yourself look like a fool. So those, in the smaller sense, that's it. But Microsoft and Sony just don't want, maybe even Activision, all the EA, they don't want the bad press of taking down these
Well, no, they
people. Nintendo have sort of tiptoed into the water on this, and if people blow back on this, I think other people will follow. But if Nintendo set up their own thing now where you can sign up to a YouTube channel, people should not go that way, because if people sign up to that way, other publishers might think, hey, there wasn't as much bad blowback as we thought, we should do this, and then there will be more content claims, but we'll see,
I mean, from what Jim, maybe it was Jim Sterling or maybe it was someone else was saying before, it was often the music that got copyright claimed instead of the game. Because they want people to play their games, some game manufacturers, not all.
I think that's down to the technology side, because I think whatever programs YouTube have or other publishers have, they're able to find music a bit like Shazam, I assume, quite easily. Because obviously, it's harder to view videos, physically view them and say, oh, right, that's Pretty in Pink or The Lost Boys have been uploaded. How do you do that? But you can obviously kind of send a music app to get soundtracks out. I think that soundtrack issue is because it's easier to find soundtracks. Just physically, that's why that became a big issue.
On a related note, but somewhat off topic, did you see Bill Maher this week, where he had on what's his name that did I Need Money? Anyway, he was talking about songwriters.
Yeah.
The Happy song, Pharrell Williams' Happy song.
Yeah.
Last year, that was played endlessly.
Sure.
The guy who wrote that song got $4,700.
Ooh.
Isn't that bad?
Well, this is why people hate lawyers, but this is when you need a good agent or a good lawyer. And it's like, if you've got no money, this is the problem. If you're living on the street and you're a poor songwriter, and some guy comes up to you and says, oh, write me a song, I'll give you $4,000, and you've no more rights to it anymore, and you sign on the dotted line. Well, it's kind of like, you idiot, right? But at the same time, the song could have been crap.
It's a standard thing. They were saying the copyright law is from the early 1900s, where copying a song meant they had player pianos that would play the music based on the holes in the sheet. So they're paying based on you copying that sheet one time. So therefore, it's 9 cents per.
Okay, so I didn't realize this. So this song was written a long time ago. Is that what you're trying to say to me? Or
no.
You're not talking about the lyrics. You're talking about the melody, are you?
The actual song itself, the person who wrote the song itself. So if I wanted to, I can go on YouTube and I can sing Happy. And the song itself, the actual lyrics and the tune, aren't protected to stop me from doing that. So I can go and make my own version of Happy. And if it becomes a massive hit, it doesn't make a difference. It doesn't matter. Like all the cover versions you always hear, bands do a cover version of someone else's song. They're not really paying for that. Or if they are, it's so little that really it's not, worth anyone's while. But anyway, what I wanted to say, that was completely off topic. What I want to say about the Power Rangers thing is that it's been done before too much. That's why for me it was just okay. I've seen this. Like they did the Mortal Kombat one.
Yeah.
They did Batman Dead End, which was really good.
Yeah, some of the
Um,
production values are amazing. I mean, in these things, that's what's impressive. But yeah, it's been done before.
like the Dora the Explorer one was great.
I
They
haven't
did
seen that one. I must check that out.
Dora the Explorer with the younger girl from Modern Family.
Hmm.
She's Dora the Explorer, and it's like Dora the Explorer for adults kind of thing, where she's got a gun and she's trying to um, fight against Swiper and stuff like that. That was really good.
Yeah, I must check that out. I mean, as I said, I'm impressed by what they did. And as you said, maybe it's a case of people realize, oh, it's really popular, right? So let's employ these guys and let's make a film. Sometimes these things happen. Like things are different now. All of a sudden you kickstart a Veronica Mars show movie or whatever. Maybe all of a sudden the Power Rangers are now like the guys who own it realize. I mean, there's all these guys with all these IPs. Now, don't get me wrong. I think the Power Rangers IP should probably stay in a closet somewhere. But like, you know, it's sometimes something like this is all it takes for people to say, hey, we should really be bringing back, whatever. I mean, Guardians of the Galaxy is this massive thing that's really cool. That comic's been around for a long time. A lot of these things, aren't, anyway. Moving on from superheroes to superhuman heroes of a type, or even Tolkien type. You've been playing Shadow of Mordor recently the last week. I've played it and stopped playing it a while ago, not because I wasn't enjoying it, but I moved on to other things. How are you enjoying it? I mean, for so many news outlets last year, or it was their game of the year in December. It came out obviously October 2014 or sometime around that time. A number of outlets voted their game of the year. They were incredibly impressed by the system, the Nemesis system. How have you found the game?
So that's what I kind of say the game is. So I went in expecting that it was going to be like a Dragon Age or a Witcher or whatever,
Yeah.
and there's very minimal story to it. Like, there's maybe 10 cutscenes in the whole game or something. There's not much really, and the story is wafer thin. So really what the game is if you took Assassin's Creed and took out the story bits and just had the kind of missions, that's essentially what Shadow of Mordor is. And the actual mechanics of it are very fun.
Yeah,
You
they
begin to
work well.
realize. So you got all these orc captains that you're meant to kill.
Yeah.
So you go around starting killing them, and then you realize, oh wait, it doesn't matter how many I kill because they just respawn. Like there's an infinite number of captains, and then you move up to the chieftains who are like the level above, and you kill them, and then you go, oh, hang on, there's an infinite number of these guys too. So you realize that the only way to progress the story is by going to the gold story missions, and the gold story missions are kind of boring, because I say the story is really thin.
Yeah,
So
it's interesting about that because without spoiling anything, it's funny because what I did was I think I did one or two of the first story missions, and then I was kind of got into this thing where I was just clearing house. It was like, oh, I won't go to, for want of a better word, you know the way it is in these games. You know that if I go there, the story moves on. That's the episode 3 and that's episode 4. So meanwhile, right now, all I'll do is I'll save a few slaves here, or I'll finish this out, or I'll try and get this, I'll power up, or whatever. So I went wandering a bit, and then I think I was like, I haven't come back to the game yet, but I hadn't moved the story on too much. I mean, but it did seem, I'd only got one or two kind of cutscenes in, if you like, Schmiegel here and there and whatever. But it did seem relatively wafer thin at that stage. But it was early on in the game when I finished it. But anyway, the one thing I did sense about the Nemesis system was it's not so much you had this great joy of killing other people, although I only was starting off in the game. It was more the dread of getting killed by these bastards and then them getting promoted. That's what really was a killer. Like, that was like, oh, I've got to get this bastard at some stage in the future now, and I've made him more powerful. How did I do that? That was so stupid. Because often, you're quite powerful. Like, it's quite a good combat system. It's really your own arrogance that gets yourself killed, because you can kind of roll away and kind of get, this up to a certain point, unless you get completely swarmed. you probably should be able to kind of, not. Often you get killed by some of the weaker guys just inadvertently. That's what I found anyway.
Like, I think there was one mission I went through where it was fight 100 orcs in an arena at the same time.
Okay.
And I went through that and I realized, oh, hang on, if I just hit the right mouse button at the right point in time, then eventually I wear them all down and then they all die. So then that kind of made the combat a lot easier.
Yeah, I did not play it with a mouse.
But what I was going to say was the thing you were saying about the guys getting promoted. I'm at the point in the game now where I've picked a guy, so I found this really fat guy, it's really fat orc, and I let him kill me. His name's Gorn, and I'm just going to try and make him chieftain.
Oh, good God.
Like, I couldn't care less about the story, so I'm going to try and make Gorn a chieftain.
And just on that one side, I mean, like, how far have you gotten into the game, hours-wise? How many hours have you put into it?
Oh, I can find that out. Hang on. 14 hours, it says. It feels like more.
Okay, that's a fair old crack. And you think you're halfway through the story or more?
More in the story missions.
Yeah.
Like, it says.
As you say, the other stuff you could probably play infinity, just killing orcs. It's just regen. But the story, what do you think? 3/4 way through?
Yeah, 2/3, 3/4, something like that. I got to the
well,
second area and I played a few missions there, and I just can't see myself wanting to finish the story mission because I'm kind of bored with it. Like, it hasn't got anything. Like, I think was it Fallout 3 that had the same problem, where the story missions were boring and the side quests were interesting.
It's funny. I mean, just on a side shoot of that, I never played into Fallout games. Obviously, there's a huge amount of anticipation that Fallout 4 is going to be announced very soon. Maybe at E3, if it hasn't been already. But so I don't know. But yeah, I mean, I haven't got to the second area of that thing at all, and I've kind of been. I haven't gone back to it, but I must do it anyway because I bought the game and I want to get my value's worth. And obviously, and it is fun mechanically. It's quite good, So it's not bad in that regard,
If you had a choice, I'd play Fallout 3 before I play Shadow of Mordor.
Fallout is a weird. I've only seen obviously video reviews of it. That's the game where you kind of shoot, but before you shoot, you choose what part of the body. It kind of freeze frames, and you choose what part of the body you want to shoot at. Isn't that it?
Yeah, if you're playing it turn-based, yeah, you can choose. You can play it real time as well.
So it's kind of like Call of Duty, or you do it this way. Is that's the way?
Yeah. So Fallout 1 and 2 I played back in the 90s.
Yeah.
And they're very much like a pick what part of the body you want to hit, like a Jagged Alliance and stuff like that. So it's like a top-down. You're looking at your characters, and everyone takes their turn. So you get to shoot, and then the bad guy gets to shoot, and then your second guy gets to shoot, and the bad guys get to shoot, and so on. And you pick, if you want to go for a headshot, it's more difficult because it's a tiny target, and you go for a body shot, you do less damage, but you're more likely to hit, and stuff like that. And then, so Fallout 3 is kind of trying to do that and do real-time stuff as well. And I found I just turned off the turn-based one and went for real-time. Because it just worked better for me, at least.
But you found the story lacking in that as well, did you?
No, the main story isn't particularly interesting, but the side missions are great. Because the side missions are all stories about actual people. Like, you go to this small town in the wasteland. Like, Fallout is like Mad Max. It was inspired by Mad Max. So you go to this small town in the wasteland where they're trying to battle against these scavenger guys who are trying to kill them all and take all their food or whatever. And you choose, like, you can go and join the scavenger guys and kill everyone in the village, or you can join the village and try and kill all the scavengers, or you can just say to hell with both of them and go on to the next place and ignore them.
Okay, that's kind of cool.
Fallout 3 is really strong on that.
Yeah, and it's a big, strong franchise that I know very little about, but clearly it's something that has a huge amount of anticipation and a fourth game potentially on its way. I mean, it's obviously a quality franchise. Just on that, you mentioned it, are you looking forward to the Mad Max film that's been delayed? But I think been delayed because I suspect this Tom Hardy Mad Max film has been delayed because it's actually good and they want to make it better. I kind of get the idea that they went, oh, this isn't just some chalky, socky kind of piece of crap we'll throw out and go direct to video. that actually I think they think it's better. Maybe that's just my idea on that one. I could be completely wrong about that. They're also producing a game on that, which other people have said could be not just a piece of absolute, licensed trash. Do you have any interest in revisiting Mad Max without Mel Gibson?
Very much without Mel Gibson, yeah.
Yeah. Tom
um,
Tom Hardy was impressive in some of the things he's done. Like in
oh,
sorry, The Warrior. Warrior is the film you've seen, haven't you? I think we.
no, I haven't seen Warrior, but I've seen him in other stuff.
Warrior is the film you should definitely see. It's a fighting film, which you think is like, oh, this is just gonna be like Rocky, right? And it's got that other guy, Noel Edgerton, who played Uncle Ben, the young Uncle Ben in the new Star Wars, the episodes 1 and 2 and 3. He's an Australian actor. You've seen him in a lot of things. He's in it, and Tom Hardy's in it. They both play brothers. Nick Nolte's their dad. It's an MMA fighting kind of a film, and you might I remember thinking, oh, this is just another one of these like Van Damme, Seagal things we all loved when we were kids, but it's a much better film than that, and very 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 good, well worth watching. I'm sure it's on Netflix or anywhere else you can get the usual spots. Definitely worth having a look at that.
But on Mad Max, the teaser trailer I thought was disastrous. So when that came out, it was like a few seconds, and I thought, oh my god, this is going to be terrible. And then the full trailer came out, and I went, oh no, this is actually going to be good. Because the full trailer looks like the teaser trailer. I forget what it was about it. It just looked kind of cheesy.
Yeah.
It looked like they didn't get what Mad Max was about, whereas the full trailer looked like it was kind of similar to Mad Max 3 maybe or something.
It looks gritty, it looks interesting. You just want something interesting. The problem with reboots is like, look, we love these things. We want to see more of them if they're done right, but not if they're done where they do a disservice to the original product or just are the same. Because what's the point? I like Chris Pratt in what he did with Guardians of the Galaxy. I really don't know why anyone would want him to do Indiana Jones. Just leave it be.
Indiana Jones?
Yeah, no, I mean, you want to see Chris Pratt as Indiana Jones? It's funny, they did a mock-up where they did Harrison Ford in the thing, an old photograph of Harrison Ford in his indie gear, and they just put Chris Pratt's face in it. I mean, they kind of look like young versions of each other, you know what I mean? So it's not that much of a stretch, but at the same time, I also think as well, if you're already, I know Harrison Ford was Han Solo while he was also Indiana Jones, but if you're already in Guardians of the Galaxy, I mean, I'm not sure the merit of being, 3 different superheroes all at the same time,
Well, it's back to our conversation about the YouTube rights. It doesn't hurt the original property. Nicolas Cage made probably the worst remake in history with The Wicker Man.
Yeah.
And I would guess that more people saw the original Wicker Man because he made a terrible remake than it otherwise. Because everyone went, oh my god, the original movie was so great and this is terrible, and people who had never heard of the original movie might go, really? The original movie was great? I might go check that out.
Yeah.
And people who saw it might go, okay, that was absolutely appalling. I wonder what the original is like. Whereas it's a movie from the mid-70s.
I mean, in some respects, I agree with you. For instance, I really do like the Sam Raimi, Tobey Maguire Spider-Man movies. I even say that 3 is not as bad as people give it. It's not as good, but actually,
it was too many villains.
Yeah, there were too many villains, and that's what the internet said, and they're right about all that. But in many respects, some of the stuff in Spider-Man 3, considering what a movie blockbuster it was, and therefore is conservative by nature, it actually is campy as shit. I mean, that whole thing where Peter Parker plays the dark Spider-Man, and he does that whole dance routine, and Tobey Maguire's giving that look, and he does that kind of 70s dance down the street. That's pure Sam Raimi, and it's pure independent filmmaking genius in a massive, big blockbuster movie. So fair fucks for that. But yeah, there are parts of it doesn't work. I agree. There are parts of it doesn't work, but it's still a better.
I think it's just that Tobey Maguire couldn't pull that off. When you have Bruce Campbell, he can pull off the campy kind of stuff because that's the kind of movie they're making. You can't mix the tones so much.
I don't know. Tobey Maguire's a better actor than you're giving him credit for. He's actually.
No, I'm not saying he's a bad actor. I'm just saying that if you have Bruce Campbell in your movie, if you have the Evil Dead movies, he's campy the whole way through. So therefore, if he acts campy in one particular scene, you go, well, that's what he's been acting like the whole time. Tobey Maguire is like in some of his movies, he's a very serious actor. And the
Mm.
Spider-Man movies, everything was very serious. So then to be suddenly campy was just such a shock to the system. You're
Yeah, it
going,
was.
okay,
It
that looks
was.
ridiculous.
No, it was. It was. But I mean, I think that's a much maligned um, third
A bit
episode in
like
that thing, and
Batman and Robin.
quite rightly. But at the same time, actually, I mean, I suppose the point I was coming to is those three movies are taken by themselves. The fact that the Amazing Spider-Man came with Andrew Garfield, they're fine. I never particularly warmed to them as much as I did with the Sam Raimi series. Even though technically speaking, obviously they're more advanced. You know, the graphics and the CGI's got better over the years.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Impressive CGI doesn't bother me. It's
no, it
like if
doesn't.
you
And in
have
many
some
respects,
crappy guy.
over reliance is a bad thing. I mean, one of the things about Sam Raimi's stuff is it still felt worldly, if you know what I mean. You know that, yeah, you knew there was CGI going on, but by and large, they were trying to get, you know, what looked like real people in there as much as possible. If anything, Spider-Man 3, you know, sort of jumped the shark on that they really over CGI'd it a bit, you know. Whereas, you know, you just want to see, you know, whatever.
But
But
Spider-Man 1 was impressive at the time, but now if you watch it, I watched it a couple of years ago.
janky
The
as fuck.
graphics are appalling. They're really, really bad.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
CGI in general, like I don't particularly like, and they over rely on it in Hollywood way too much.
Yeah, because it ages your film. That's the problem with it, you know. It does age your film, um,
But
and
it just doesn't look realistic because
yeah,
subconsciously we know that it's not a real human. So it doesn't matter if they're getting smashed against a wall because who cares? It's just a computer character.
yeah. No, I agree. You know, ultimately, when you overuse it, it's a bit like The Matrix. I was rewatching The Matrix a few weeks back, and like the first movie is just so perfect. I actually do. Again, I'm a big supporter of this. I think we can't get behind this too much. Episode 2 and 3 are all crazy batshit stuff, but like the truth is, the whole thing is a bit batshit. You know, when you try and tear it apart. So I wouldn't criticize it too much for that. But so I actually like the trilogy. You know, a lot of people say, "Oh, it'd be great if they just did the first movie." Yeah, the first movie was amazing, but like actually, there's a lot of good things that are brought, like some amazing fight sequences in 2 and 3, and Trinity is used way more, and all this stuff. It's a great series, and I'd prefer it as the three, irrespective of its problems. But I will say this: the over reliance on CGI, particularly in 2 and 3, when they were doing all the the fighting man, like the multiple Agent Smiths, there are huge janky moments in that where you go, that's not Keanu Reeves. It's kind of a a CGI version of it. And it's like if that was on for a millisecond, I've no problem with it. But you're putting it on screen for far too many seconds now. I can see it. I don't want to be seeing this. I want to look away. It's not good.
Well, the problem with the Matrix movies is, and I forget, someone else has said this, and I'm just repeating them, but at the end of the first movie, they made Keanu Reeves a god. Neo's a god.
Yeah.
He can fly. He can jump into agents and kill them. He can do anything. So then you got to make two more movies where your main character is already a god. So you're kind of screwed. So then
But
you
they
need to
did,
kind of
but actually, that's what they did really well. Which is actually he was a god in the Matrix, but how was he got his ass kicked and his eyes burned? Spoilers. In real life.
and
But,
then you
but I'm
realize that
thinking,
that's part of the
but I
Matrix.
mean, like, I was watching that recently, and that moment when he starts realizing that outside the Matrix that he still has some powers, and that's the real trick. I mean, that's some powerful shit right there. Let me tell you. I mean, I rewatched that a
Well,
couple of weeks ago, and I remember going, "Fuck, that's fucking amazing!" And I have seen these movies before, So
well, the problem I had with that was that the architect gave that away. So most people watched the scene with the architect and went, "What the frick is he talking about? I don't understand anything."
yeah, totally. You
And I
will.
went, "Well, he just said that the thing outside the Matrix, Zion, is part of another Matrix. There's a Matrix inside a Matrix. So therefore, he said there's been a cycle over and over and over 10 times or whatever he said. There's always a Neo. There's always some dude who goes to some place outside the Matrix, which is really inside another Matrix, and then becomes a superhero, and then ends the internal Matrix by shutting it down in the external matrix, and they start the whole process again, which is what Neo did. So there you go.
Boom! And the internet explodes with my brain. No, absolutely. But I mean, I did not spot that the first pass at all, let me tell you. I didn't even spot it the second time when I was watching it 3 weeks ago, you fucker. But anyway, moving on. Very quick, because I know we're kind of overrunning a little. Just short, on top of your head, House of Cards is coming. I think it'll be on Netflix tomorrow at some stage, or if not tomorrow on Saturday. No, no spoilers. Just joking aside, what do you think they're going to do this year to make it? He's the president now. I try to stay away from trailers, but I know that they're using there's some other political person in play. I think it's that guy who maybe have played a Bond villain before, or something like that. He's a sort of a Scandinavian actor, or somebody we'd be familiar with, although I can't think of his name at the moment. There's going to be another, if you like, political figure in there who's going to be playing games with Frank Underwood. What do you think? Pure guessing now. Have you any ideas where this season 3 is going to go? What direction they're going to go, or whatever? Just spitball.
Well, they're kind of.
Will there be a threesome with his guard, his security guard and the wife? Well, where are they heading with all this?
Well, they were only just fooling around, I think.
Yeah, sure. Well, I mean, will it go further? Maybe that's not the central.
Well, no, that's both Claire and Frank's thing, that they mess with people. But what I was going to say was that the English show ran into trouble because in the English show,
one season, wasn't that right?
Three seasons, but they were spaced out with a number of years in between.
But they're well off. I didn't know that because I never watched the English show. But are they well off pieced in terms of that now? I mean, they're not following that universe at all.
It's obviously quite different because there's 10 episodes in the American one, and there was only 4 in each season in the English one. But there was touchstones throughout the first season. Without spoiling anything, I knew who was going to die.
Yeah, sure.
And the second season as well, there was kind of touchstones. The second season in the English show was called To Play the King, I think. And that was where it was Frank Urquhart in the English show against the King, because the King was saying this Prime Minister isn't doing enough for poor people and so on. And Frank Urquhart put him in his place, pretty much. So the problem the US show has is there's no king in America. You can't have Frank against the King because there is no king. And he's kind of gotten to the top of the ladder. Like, you don't get any further up than the president. He can be, for a second term, he can not be elected. But you can't get any higher, and you can't be, you can be impeached, but doesn't happen very often in America. So there's not really any threat to him. So that's going to be the challenge, I think, in the third season. What's going to be the threat to Frank so he is in actual proper trouble?
Okay, that's interesting. And just on that, tell me, because I really missed this the first time round. Obviously, I was aware of it, but when did you watch House of Cards, the UK version? I mean, have you subsequently gone and watched it, or I mean, were you watching it in around the time?
Watched it in around the time, and then I bought the DVDs a few years ago to rewatch it. And so I watched then the first season, and then waited a while and watched the second. So it's kind of, so I'd seen it twice, but, spaced out by 20 years, so not necessarily, didn't remember much of what was going to happen. Other than I knew who was going to die, because those were kind of, you remember that. Okay,
well, I'm going to move on, because again, we've been kind of going at this for a while, but you kind of brought this something I'd never seen at all this week on a very interesting. I've never seen this website before. It's the bleedingdisgusting.com. I don't know. This is some website you frequent a little bit, Simon. But there's a news story here by Mr. Disgusting. I'm wondering if Mr. Disgusting is really his real name. I think his Twitter. Yeah, I think his Twitter handle is Brad Miska. But anyway, he writes that he's got a headline here saying that Sam Raimi is directing Ash versus the Evil Dead pilot. So the story seems to suggest that there's going to be an Evil Dead TV series, and um, I didn't watch it, but there's obviously last 2 years ago there was a reboot of the Evil Dead movie, so it was a kind of a remake, not involving Sam Raimi. Certainly not, he wasn't directing it, and I chose not to watch that, having watched the
I didn't
originals
watch it.
having watched the originals way back in the day. Um, is this a good thing? What do you think about this? Will you be watching it? Um, are
Well,
we getting into a situation there with the Evil Dead franchise, which is, it's kind of been done? I mean, like, it was a great show. Should it be left alone?
so my issue with it will be if what kind of show it is. So if it's going to be a Monster of the Week thing,
Yeah.
then I have very little interest in that. Whereas if it's going to be like a whole series about one thing, telling you like a complete story, then I'd definitely be interested in watching it. I'm just gonna get a glass of water, Mike. I'll be back in 10
Yeah,
seconds.
sure. I mean, just on that, just reading into this story, um, they're saying here, I'm just quoting from it, that Dread Central, whoever they are, they caught up with Bruce Campbell, who plays obviously Ash in the original trilogy, and they were talking about this new incarnation. I mean, so far, I don't see who seems to be publishing the particular show or who's investing any money in it. But they're saying that they've ordered 10 episodes. Principal photography slated for April in New Zealand, which is obviously a place that a lot of movies are taking or being produced at the moment because of good for costs. And they're saying that they're going to launch the TV show in Halloween 2015 on Stars. Now, Stars is an American TV site that who are currently famous for, well, they're showing that series Outlander, which is based on the books about Claire from this Outlander, this woman Claire who went back in time, etc. She's a nurse who goes back in time, and that's been quite popular. Certainly,
Well, the book series is
yeah,
huge.
the book series is huge, and I know the TV series is getting a bit of buzz. I mean, I know nothing about it other than I know a lot of sort of few friends in America on Facebook are going crazy about this show. So Stars is that kind of that channel. They're
Stars
kind of
is
trying to say, yeah, they're saying here. I mean, they're mentioning we want to be competitive with The Walking Dead. I mean,
yeah.
it's certainly, yeah. What do
Stars
you
is
think
the
about that?
equivalent
That
of
would be an interesting angle, you know?
Stars is the equivalent of AMC, HBO, that Showtime, that kind of they're
Yeah,
really good quality shows.
yeah,
So
yeah,
they made Spartacus, which was a very it was a great show, one of my favorite shows. They're making Da Vinci's Demons at the moment.
hmm
What they tend to make is the less serious side of things. So Spartacus was a lot of nudity and violence and swearing. Uh, it was very good, but like it was kind of appealing to people on a kind of a base level. Do you want to see everyone naked? And the amount of penises in that show was off the charts. Every episode there's like 20 penises. Um, so they make that kind of show, and they make Da Vinci's Demons, which is there's a period
yeah,
in Da Vinci's life where they don't know what he did.
yeah. I think
Um,
that's on like Sky Living or something on the UK channels for sure. They've taken that up. I think that's a few. There's a few English actors and actresses in that show as well, from memory. Although I've never watched it myself.
but
Um,
that's if you played Assassin's Creed, the Italian one, the Assassin's Creed 2, I think,
hmm
where Da Vinci's in it and he's inventing a tank and a helicopter and a plane and things that are ridiculous because he never invented them.
Yeah,
That's what Da Vinci's Demons is.
there's a TV
So
show.
every episode he like invents something that doesn't exist for another 1,000 years, and it's a completely ridiculous show. But then it's a lot of fun to watch because it's humorous and it's well made and the actors are good and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
It's
well,
very
it's funny because I've seen that show listed, but I've never given it a go. But just on that, are you still watching The Walking Dead, or have you given up on that show? I
no, I
mean,
gave up a long time ago.
Yeah.
When
I mean, I'm watching The Walking
so
Dead. Yeah. I mean, I'm still watching it. I haven't given up just yet. It's certainly, it's a decent. I think it's a decent show. It's tense. It's an event type of a show. A bit like um, Game of Thrones can be as well. It's certainly tense watching it. I mean, it's an uncomfortable experience watching it sometimes, which is what they should be achieving.
well, they made a
So,
huge mistake.
would you like The Walking Dead kind of Evil Dead with humor? So it's like, isn't that really the Evil Dead TV show? If it was like The Walking Dead, it's just The Walking Dead with a bit of humor in it. Is that what you'd be looking for?
Like The Walking Dead, the reason I gave up was character consistency. So
What did you not like? You weren't happy with Rick, was that it?
no, 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 no. All the characters, they were all idiots. So they've all been in this zombie apocalypse, and you've seen them do incredibly smart things, and then they do dumb things. So I read the comic book up to in the late teens episode or something. And in that, people learn from their mistakes. And in the TV show, because they want to up the ante all the time, people don't. So there was a part near the end of season 3, maybe, where there was a zombie that was stuck on this chicken wire.
Yeah.
And so instead of, like, shooting, I think she had a gun or a knife or something. Instead of dealing with it from afar, she started climbing onto the chicken wire and then rolled down beside the zombie so the zombie could jump on top of her. I went, okay, this has gotten stupid.
Yeah, but dude, I mean, you are yourself. I mean, like, you have to have incidents. People have to do stupid things and end up in weird situations. That's what a
But
TV show is.
no,
That's
because if the people act smart first, if they're complete dumbasses the whole way through, then you go, well, this is another dumbass thing. But if they act smart and they do smart things, and then they go, okay, so I've dealt with all these zombies really carefully up until now for the last however long it is in the show, a year or 18 months or something. I've been really smart and I've kept myself alive because everyone else who was stupid has gotten killed. But now I'm going to jump into some chicken wire with this zombie because that sounds like a load of fun. I
okay.
mean,
I'm
that's
not
just
sure. I'm not
doesn't work.
exactly sure which episode you're referencing, but I'll take you on your word. I mean, look, that can happen. You should probably give it another go. That's all I might say to you.
I
But
just
anyway, not
completed
forever.
so many opportunities. Like I kept going through season 2, where it's season 2 with the governor, wasn't it? Or maybe that was season 3.
I think three, Governor. Yeah,
Anyway, so maybe I kept
maybe
going till season
maybe even
4.
four, 3 and 4. I don't know, but yeah,
But the governor, what's her name? The blondie that was saying,
Andrea.
"Oh, the governor's a good guy," Andrea. She kept saying, "Oh, he's a good guy. I've seen him murder guys in front of me and throw people to zombies, but he's a good guy." No, no one in their right mind would ever say that. They're just that's script writers just distorting people's views to make it fit what they want the episode to do.
Yeah,
Like,
because it's called television. 42 minutes every week. They need to do stuff. What can I say?
but things, if you don't have consistent characters, then you lose me at least. Like if
Okay,
people
no,
can't,
that's fair enough. I mean, that's fair enough.
then they're not
Um,
real people anymore.
so you will not be checking out the Evil Dead TV show, or you give it a try?
Oh no, I'll give it a try because the only reason I gave up with Walking Dead was because I mean I
Really?
think if they'd have kept
But
Frank Darabont, it would have been still a good show now.
this is a writers' union issue. It's a writers' union issue. They got rid of the original writer. You're not happy about it.
Oh, it's not particularly that. It's any time you have an original creator of a show and the show is good, there's no reason to change that person. Not unless they're being, an idiot and saying I want $100 million.
Well, we'll never know, and we're not going to speculate. Okay, we're gonna try something a little bit lighter. Some news today. There's a lot of outlets taking this news. I think I gave you a post for a Eurogamer article about a PC and an Xbox game, Fable Legends. It's going free to play.
Hmm.
This is interesting. Fable, I don't know if you've ever played, was an Xbox Lionhead product. It's famously a Peter Molyneux product, who obviously has been in the news over the last 2 or 3 weeks, but for different reasons. But I remember playing the original Fable on the original Xbox. It's kind of a third-person action RPG type of thing, very pleasant thing with story, and there was a sequel and a third game as well. There's a few other games that weren't sort of offshoots of the same thing, but they weren't hugely important. This Fable Legends is a very different departure type of game. it's kind of, people are talking about it as a League of Legends. I've never really played League of Legends, but what it is a four heroes against villain type of a game. The villain being played as a sort of an RTS, a real-time strategy, so a top-down view with the heroes, and the heroes would play as a sort of a third-person action, or a bit like Witcher or something like that. But the announcement today is, I think that was quite a lukewarm reaction to Fable Legends. I don't know why, because actually I think, people are complaining about the game being the same game for the last three games, and they went in a sort of a different multiplayer direction, and they were getting guff for it. But there's an announcement again on a lot of sites. Eurogamer have a particular article, confirming that there's been an announcement today by Lionhead Studios that it's going to be a free-to-play model. You're a PC gamer. I mean, free-to-play. The article there is Wesley's Zinpool, and he's just confirming that is. But it's effectively a press release. There's a number of sites who have this story today. But as a PC gamer, you've played plenty of free-to-play games. They can have a good and a bad reputation. What's your view about free-to-play, and have you any interest in this particular product when it goes online? It also has the advantage of being cross-platform, which is very rare between Xbox and PC. I mean, I think this is the way of a lot of games in the future. But, I mean, the fact that it's cross-platform, I think I'd mentioned this to you a few weeks ago. The fact that it's free to play cross-platform means with no investment whatsoever. I mean, somebody playing on Xbox can play with PC anywhere around the world, and then obviously they'll want you to spend money in the game, but you don't have to. What do you think? What are the golden rules for a fair free-to-play? I mean, what free-to-play games have you played? And are you familiar with League of Legends? Have you played them?
I haven't played League of Legends. I played Blacklight, which was very good.
Okay.
Most free-to-play games I avoid because they're
Blacklight is kind of like, just to sort of be clear, that's almost like a Call of Duty first-person shooter type of a Halo game, isn't it? Yeah, and I think it was by Zombies published that or something like that. I'm not quite sure, but yeah, Jedla, I know of that game. It actually looked like a good game.
So that was a game where their whole point was, we're making this free so you can try it, and you don't have to buy anything at all if you don't want to. But we're going to try and make cool things that you're going to want, so you'll buy them. Same with Team Fortress. Team Fortress does the same thing. You don't have to buy anything at all if you don't want in Team Fortress. But most free-to-play games are pay-to-win games, which means if you want, you can spend the next 600 hours playing this game so you can earn this whatever, or you can spend $5 and you'll get it right now.
Well, that is the core issue, because of course as soon as this news gets launched, the internet goes absolutely crazy, forgets about Kim Kardashian for 5 seconds, and decides that free to play automatically means free to win or pay to win, which it does in some products. Obviously, that's the case where it's like, well, it's free, and it's like, well, it's free, but it's not much fun playing the free version because you're making me grind for 400 hours to do to get level 1, whatever, and the game is useless unless you're level 20. So you're forcing me to pay, absurd amounts of money, in relation to it. So I think Microsoft or Lionshead came out and said, none of the content, the quests, any single quest or map is going to be behind a paywall. Nothing at all. So every part of the game can be played. What they're going to do is that week 1, there's going to be 4 characters free to play. And after 2 weeks, those 4 characters will be rotated out and replaced with 4 other characters. And then 2 weeks later, same. Now, presumably what that means is if you've built up XP with your characters, let's call it Simon and Michael, for a week, the first 2 weeks, you'll be back to 0 with the new characters that you get on week 2, unless you pay for them, But really all that means is, if you're enjoying the game, you have to pay for it. Like, look, somebody created this, they have to get some money. If you're not enjoying the game, you don't have to pay for it at all. I mean, that seems somewhat fair, somewhat fair. It seems like they're taking a League of Legends model, but I'm not aware what the League of Legends model would be. So
Oh, League of Legends is the same thing. I think
Yeah.
there's certain characters that are free for 2 weeks or a month or whatever it is, and then it's different characters. And because there's 100 and something League of Legends characters, you find one that you really like,
Yeah.
and then you go, okay, well I'll spend $10 or whatever it is on this character.
And I'll always have him,
Yeah.
whatever. But I mean, it's not fair. I mean, like they're giving you a game for free, which they could be charging you $60 for. Now, you might end up spending more than $60 if you become one of these notorious whales who are on these iPhone games and they buy a free game, but all of a sudden they're paying 200 quid a month just to play Star Wars, whatever that tip tap game is, or Flappy Birds, whatever, free to play. And they call those guys the whales. But I mean, that's a little bit about some personal consumer responsibility. I mean, like, you can't criticize them for that. I mean, they're giving you a game for free unless you want to pay for bits of it. They're
Well,
not locking.
the thing that games manufacturers have realized, and this is mostly what are they called? The ones that made Farmville and things like that. What they've realized is if they hire psychologists and psychiatrists and things like that, behavioral psychiatrists or psychologists, one of those, that they can make things that are in tune with people's rewards on their brain and things like that. The same as you would train a rat to run a maze or whatever. By giving them rewards at exactly the right time, you keep people addicted to your game
Yeah,
forever.
the dopamine sensory sort of thing, reward. Yeah.
So the reason why companies are doing free to play is because they earn twice as much money as they earn with a paid game. So it's not like they're being altruistic about it. They just know that if they make a game in a certain way where they this is not necessarily the Fable Legends, I'm just talking about in general, that if they make a
Yeah.
game a certain way, you will get to, oh, I need another crystal to do this. And you've gotten 5 crystals free, and those crystals you've used to build your whatever, and you've built up 5 different things, and then you need a crystal. Oh, but I got to wait 100 minutes to get the next crystal, or I can spend $1. And people go, well, $1 is nothing. Like, who cares? I'll use $1 on this and I'll get the crystal now. Oh, but I just used that crystal. Okay, well, 100 minutes or $1. Okay, I'll just use $1, and then it's $200. So that kind of thing, obviously, I think is appalling. But if they do the blacklight thing where they go, listen, the entire game is free. You can play with these, like in blacklight, there's like, I don't know, 10 guns or something free, and you can play as much as you want with those. And these guns are just as good as any of the other guns in the game, other than the fact that they do specific things. Like maybe you get a sniper rifle that's better over long range if you pay for it or something.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's one of the big objections. If you have a situation where all things being fair, you could be playing a game and all of a sudden somebody comes in, they've played no hours in the game, but they suddenly spend 200 quid, and all of a sudden you just can't win. You can't compete against these guys. That's when it comes, right. They're paying money and I can't compete with you. So there has to be a balancing issue about that, so that you know buying characters though seem to avoid that issue, because by buying characters instead of buying, if you're able to go in day one and say, I'm a millionaire, I'll buy one of those amazing guns that'll kill everybody, and then you have a competitive advantage that's just unfair. But as long as it's just different characters that you work up from 0 XP onwards, that seems somewhat fair. But in the sense that you're earning it through play, as opposed to earning power through money, like real world money. But we'll see.
I
Will
mean,
you be giving that? Would you be interested in giving those kind of games? I don't really play those kind of game. I've never really played this sort of multiplayer.
no, my point of view is
Asynchronous.
always
It's not. It's asynchronous games, is it, or is it? It's not isometric. The isometric is the top-down or
yeah.
TS view, but asynchronous is the multiplayer. I'm not sure if that is the correct terminology,
Well,
but
it'd be
I,
synchronous. Otherwise, you'd have lag all the time if it was asynchronous.
exactly. So I mean, like, it'd be interesting to see how it works, particularly between consoles and PC, and how they manage to sort that out. But time will
My
tell.
my default position, because of so many of these things, is just free to play equals bad. Free to play.
I think I think that is the general position.
Because
It's not
everyone's had
always.
experience with them now, and they know that they're terrible. They're usually just ways to get part the consumer from their money and not entertain them.
Well, it could be also in this case. I think they think that they're going a whole new. The devil's advocate side is they're kind of going a new direction with Fable Legends from the original game. So maybe they're worried that just the people who like Fable won't like this model. But if we could get them to try it, they may realize actually no, we like this better than before. It has all the same quirky characteristics. It's just a different type of a player mechanic.
Like
once we do that, then they'll be prepared to pay the 60 quid.
If
I mean, Microsoft were very successful with launching Killer Instinct on their platform, which is effectively the same thing, which is a free-to-play beat 'em up. Killer Instinct's an old Rare franchise, a bit like Street Fighter. And the thing is, day one, you're entitled to the free game, totally free. And it'll update, Season 2 will update, and you'll get all the graphical things totally free. But you're only entitled to play one. You can play against other characters, right? As many characters as are in the game. But you're only entitled to one character, and that character rotates every month or so. So, in the old days, you'd have Ryu or whatever, or Chun-Li. That comes every month, and it's random. And if you pay 60 quid, you get all the characters. You get the season pass. And then Season 2 comes in, there's another 12 things. But you can actually play perfectly the whole game mechanics, the full character, for free, and there's no pay to win in it. Obviously, other people have more choice with different characters, etc. But I think they looked at that and they realized that actually really, people like that. And I think they're thinking maybe that's a good way to go with Fable Legends. I just think that maybe the thinking behind that.
Like that is not the metric they use to determine if they're going to do something again. It's
sure.
Paid more money than they would have done if it was a $60 game is the metric. But I think
they're not in there to lose money. I agree with you 100%. But I just think they're more open to it because of its success with another franchise.
Sure, but I would say that the truth will come out in the long term. So if I hear from lots of people, oh, this Fable Legends is awesome, I might try it. Like I've heard League of Legends is great. I don't enjoy those kind of games, but I get it. Like the Dota kind of games. I played...
yeah, I mean, Dota 2. I listen to so many podcasts where guys love this Dota thing, and I'm just looking at it and going, this just doesn't look interesting to me. And yet there are people sucking hours of their life into this and loads of money into this stuff. I mean, there was some article 2 weeks ago about this fluffy dog character that came, was some sort of add-on that everyone was absolutely raving about. And, they're spending money on this, having this sidekick companion dog. Anyway, it doesn't really matter. But I look at that game and I go, that just doesn't interest me. And yet I've never played it. I don't know. It's a PC gaming thing, though, MOBAs are coming to consoles, but it'll be interesting to see what the take-up is on the console version for MOBAs and whether it'll work in the same way.
I mean, the problem I had with the Dota kind of game I played was that you're part of a team with two other real people in the real world, and if you're starting to play, you don't have a clue what you're doing. So then you're making them lose, and they're screaming blue murder, either typing or over the microphone, going, "What are you doing, you noob?" All of us. Just go over there and do the XYZ, or you're going to get us killed.
You're so bloody passionate about it. But I mean, it's the same even doing, being on Xbox and you're playing like Halo or you're playing Call of Duty, which I don't really play multiplayer that often. I certainly haven't really played Call of Duty. You're just there and you're like, I'm not really good at this. I mean, I'm good at the single player where I'm against AI and, they're whatever. But like, when you're against human opponents, you're just getting your ass handed to you. And it's just like people are screaming, go left, go right. And you're like, I have no idea. I don't even know which way is left. I don't even know which way is right. So, yeah, it's funny. Look,
Xbox Live is
probably well past my prime days of Twitch-based shooters and probably should give up gaming. I'm too old for it. But, it's kind of funny, to kind of do that and realize, God, there are people spending hundreds and hundreds of hours at this and are really, really good at it. They take it like serious, so serious, almost religiously serious,
Well, it's like I had with Call of Duty.
Back in the day, maybe.
But that was on PC as well, so it wasn't. Xbox Live obviously is famous for being horrible, like being the worst of humanity, because consoles have more teenage boys on them than PCs do. I would say.
dear. Yeah, possibly.
And teenage boys tend to say incredibly racist, homophobic, and
They
sexist
do,
things
they do,
all the
they do,
time.
they do. It can be quite disturbing for sure. But then again, the adults can just be as bad as the kids. So let's not be
I'm sure,
completely
yeah, I'm
discredited.
sure they can. I mean, I'm just like when I was playing Call of Duty, I never saw the kind of stuff that I've seen on some like screenshots and stuff of Xbox players where I'm going, holy smokes, like how the heck can you get away with that?
Yeah, no, I know what you mean. As I said, I've been there. I've been there. All right, look, I think that brings us to the end of this week's podcast, the second episode of this podcast. Simon, thanks for joining me again. Again, apologies for not being here last week. That was entirely my own fault. I know you've got the flu. I'm still kicking the ass out of the end of my flu. Hopefully, we'll be back to 100% next week. We're going to do this. I see that we've got at least one viewer here in the audience. Hopefully, we're going to do this again next week, same time, 8:30 on Thursdays. We're going to do the Pundit podcast. We'll do episode 3 next week. And I don't know. We'll check out the news. Let's see what happens in the next 7 days, and hopefully we'll talk about it and we'll think about it. All right. So we'll see you then. We're out.
Bye bye.
Bye.